Wendy Fox is 38 years old. She's blind and dependent on a wheelchair. She's paralysed from the waist down. This could have been avoided if she'd had the right treatment for Lyme disease years ago. Wendy used to be a zookeeper. So, is that linked with your Lyme disease, Wendy?
Well, probably, but it's hard to say really, because I was living in an area that was endemic with wildlife anyway, so it could have been a tick on one of the animals that I work with, or it could have been just ticks in the area, and I was also bitten over a number of years anyway, so it's hard to say which one, or if it was several. It's a bit of an unknown quantity, really.
So is it always passed on by ticks then, Lyme disease?
Yes, it is Borrelia, the actual organism that causes Lyme disease, has been isolated from other insects, but whether it's actually transmitted hasn't been proven yet. But it's been isolated from fleas and sandflies and mosquitoes, so it's a case of proving whether they can transmit it as well, but it hasn't actually been looked into just yet.
Right. We can just hear in the background that's oxygen being delivered to you, is it?
That's right.
Yeah. So you have to have oxygen all the time?
It depends. Most of the time. I've got also got a heart condition. I've got cardiomyopathy and respiratory problems as well, which is caused by the Lyme disease.
It's devastating.
It has been, yes.
Just from what we think is just from an insect bite.
That's right. I mean, people don't realise how insidious the disease is, because for some people it can be simply a case of a bit of a flu-like illness, but for other people it can be much more devastating than that. And a lot of people as well, they get misdiagnosed with ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, as well.
Yes, you weren't diagnosed properly at the beginning, were you?
No, I had every diagnosis under the sun, really, but it was from anything from post-infectious syndrome to postnatal depression, stress, anything they could think of, really, without really looking into what the cause was. And it was actually an infectious diseases consultant that I paid to see privately that, having looked at what I did for as a job, said, "I think you have Lyme disease." And he did some tests, and I was one of the few lucky ones that have a test that comes back positive, because the disease itself is able to suppress the immune system, and the tests that we have rely on the presence of antibodies. So there's a small window for when you can actually get a positive result. So I was very lucky, really, in that respect, and they were able to act quite quickly at the time, but I didn't have very long duration of treatment, so my disease progressed from there, basically.
We ought to add that the zoo is in this country.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
So it happened in this country.
Yes, and I've worked at various places in this country, and again, it's hard to say where I was infected, but...
Keith, you've got I'm sorry, I ought to explain that Wendy's dad here is Keith, and you've got your own views on perhaps how it happened.
Well, we strongly suspect that she was infected when she was about 11, because at that stage she developed a mysterious rash, and we took her to the doctor. We didn't know what it was, and the doctor didn't know what it was, and he said, "But it will go away." And it did, so we thought everything was all right for the time being. And then when she was at secondary school, she had another strange incident when we got a call from the school to say she was being sent by ambulance to hospital because she couldn't move her legs. And when she got to the hospital, the house doctor examined her, and her legs were blue and very cold, and he seemed very sympathetic, but by the time she saw the consultant, she was feeling better, and the consultant afterwards treated us very much as if we were over-fussy parents being hoodwinked by an attention-seeking child. But we think that this was an early prelude to the later incident which caused her to lose the feeling in her legs and lose her ability to walk.
So there's it sounds like there's some, it could be a dormant period, a long dormant period in your case, is that a fact?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the organism can lay dormant. In a way, it's like chickenpox and shingles. For some people that have chickenpox as a child, and then later that will develop into shingles as an adult, and that can be very much how Borrelia works. The immune system can just about keep control of it, and you don't get any symptoms, and then later on you can suffer another illness or a stress. And for women, sometimes pregnancy as well can be a trigger for actual symptomatic infection.
So when you were pregnant and you had your child, everything was fine?
No,
as far as you knew?
not at all. I had a very, very difficult pregnancy, and I also had several miscarriages previously, and my pregnancy was extremely difficult, and I gave birth very prematurely. My son actually has congenital Lyme disease, but he's what you call asymptomatic. He doesn't have any particular symptoms, and Lyme disease can be like that for a lot of people. And also people who are working out in the field getting bitten regularly can actually have the disease and not know it, and be bitten just that one too many times, and the immune system is overloaded and eventually becomes symptomatic.
So you can be carrying, in fact, in a sense then, you could actually carry it through the rest of your life and not know you've got it.
Indeed, and also it can be passed from mother to child as well, so as I've just said. And so mothers can actually have the disease and not know it, and they have a baby and the baby seems fine, and then eventually maybe the child will get another normal childhood illness and go on to develop symptomatic Lyme disease after that.
So you had problems when your son was born. Well, how did it develop then? I mean, you sit in front of me and I see a person, apart from the fact you're having the oxygen going in, is it through your nose?
Yes.
You've got this pipe into your nose?
Yes.
You look fine.
Yes, and that's quite common with Lyme disease as well.
When you think of so many things that have gone wrong, it's amazing.
Lyme disease is one of the diseases that people, unless they can see an actual physical effect like with me, they don't realise how sick the person is, and people can be housebound, bedbound, have a miserable existence, but to look at them you wouldn't be able to see anything wrong with them.
So how did it progress, if that's the correct word? How did it slowly attack your body?
Well, with me, and it varies from person to person, I had initial treatment and I did improve, and there's quite a lot of different strains of Borrelia bacteria. In fact, there's over 300 strains, and in Europe we have differing strains to Lyme disease itself, because Lyme disease is named Lyme disease because it was discovered as a cluster of infections in Old Lyme in Connecticut, and that particular strain is Borrelia burgdorferi, which causes predominantly arthritis and a rash that is described as a bullseye rash because it looks exactly like a bullseye. But the European strains are different. They have predominantly neurological, some of them have predominantly neurological effects, and some of them don't produce rashes. In fact, less than 50% of people actually develop a rash, which is always assumed to follow a tick bite. And with me, I had the initial treatment and I did improve, and I had got joint problems, and these did resolve a little bit, but some of the symptoms like tingling in my hands and feet, forgetfulness, tiredness, extreme tiredness, didn't improve at all. And I just lived with it, and I just got on with my life, continued working, continued with what I'd got to do. And in 3 years later I had a huge relapse and was hospitalised again, and I was told that I had post-infectious syndrome, or post-Lyme syndrome in fact, and nobody seemed to think I could possibly still be infected, and I knew that I had to be, because everything was happening in the same way as it had been before. So I made investigations and actually spoke to a professor who knew quite a lot about Lyme disease, and he said to me, yes, I think you still have it. But I had to persuade my infectious diseases consultant that I still had it, and he made investigations talking to American doctors, and eventually conceded that I probably still was infected and offered me further treatment.